You will never find love, cold, sterile CEO, divorced, and abbot on her. 2 years later, she controls an empire. Danielle's throat closed as the lie hit her. They'd met when she was stocking shelves at an Ohio grocery store, attending community college at night. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who once claimed to love you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The day Grant Whitmore destroyed Danielle Brooks on the courthouse steps of Manhattan wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the birth of a vendetta that would shake Wall Street to its core. Camera flashes exploded like gunshots as Grant crushed the divorce papers into her hand. His whisper meant only for her. You will never find love. Not because she wasn't worthy, but because he needed to believe it. Danielle stood frozen, the crisp autumn air cutting through her thin blazer. Just hours ago, she'd been Mrs. Whitmore, wife of New York's hotel king. Now she was nobody, her designer clothes and wedding ring the only remnants of a life she'd thought was real. Ms. Brooks, look here, a reporter shouted. How does it feel to be divorced after only 11 months? Another voice called out, is it true you married him for his money? Grant turned toward the cameras, his jawline sharp as glass. I made a mistake, he announced, loud enough for the gathering press. I brought a gold digger into my life and my company. That ends today. Danielle's throat closed as the lie hit her. They'd met when she was stocking shelves at an Ohio grocery store, attending community college at night. He'd been there scouting property, had asked her to dinner, sworn her simple background was refreshing. She believed him. Their whirlwind romance had seemed magical, until the fertility doctor delivered news that Grant was sterile. Within days, he'd transformed from loving husband to cold stranger, accusing her of marrying him for his fortune. Now, as his town car pulled away, she stood alone with nothing but a suitcase and the whispers of onlookers. The New York Post photographer captured her devastation in a shot that would run tomorrow. Whitmore Hotel air dumps gold-digging bride. Danielle closed her eyes, feeling the sidewalk tilt beneath her. Memories flashed, Grant's hands on her body, his promises whispered against her neck, the heat they'd created together. All of it had turned to ash in her mouth. A text buzzed her phone. Her mother, come home, baby. This New York dream was too big anyway. But something hardened inside Danielle as she read those words. Going home meant Grant won. Meant she really was what he claimed. A small-town girl who reached too high. No, she whispered, though no one could hear. This isn't over. She straightened her shoulders and hailed a cab. The last $53 in her account enough to get her to a cheap hotel. As Manhattan blurred past the window, Danielle made a silent vow that would change everything. She wouldn't just survive this. She would make him regret the day he spoke her name. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who once claimed to love you? That moment when you realize everything was built on sand? Share your story below, because sometimes the most powerful force isn't love. It's the strength you find when love fails you. And Danielle Brooks was about to discover just how strong she really was. The tabloid photo of her humiliation on those courthouse steps would circulate for weeks. But no one who mocked the gold digger bride could possibly know they were witnessing the beginning, not the end. No one could know that 2 years later, Grant Whitmore would walk into a room and come face to face with a woman he destroyed, only to find himself at her mercy. They say revenge takes time, but reinvention? That happens in the space between heartbeats. In the moment a woman decides her worth isn't determined by the man who tried to destroy her. The Savannah heat pressed against Danielle's skin as she stood outside the Azalea Inn, her resume clutched in hands that once wore diamond bracelets. The Spanish moss hanging from ancient oaks seemed to whisper what she already knew. The old Danielle was dead. 6 weeks had passed since the courthouse steps. 6 weeks of unanswered job applications, of rental agents who somehow recognized her name from the tabloids, of sleeping on a friend's couch until even that welcome expired. You have no experience in hospitality, the hotel manager said, peering at her resume over reading glasses. I'm a fast learner, Danielle replied. What she didn't say, I have nowhere else to go. That night, She scrubbed toilets until her fingers cracked, changed sheets until her back screamed. When a drunk guest grabbed her waist and whispered, "Aren't you that gold digger from TV?" she smiled through clenched teeth and kept working. By day, she cleaned rooms. By night, she studied hospitality management textbooks until the words blurred. 3 months of minimum wage and sleeping in a converted storage room above the laundry. "You work harder than anyone I've seen," Martha Jensen, the 60-year-old hotel owner, said one evening, finding Danielle reorganizing the filing system at 2 a.m. "But there's something in your eyes that scares me a little." Danielle looked up from the papers. "I don't have the luxury of failure." When Martha looked up from Danielle's resume and said, "Honey, you're overqualified for housekeeping, but underqualified for management. So which story are you not telling me?" Danielle realized she had a choice: hide her past or weaponize it. She took a breath and confessed everything. The whirlwind romance, the wealthy husband, the public destruction. Martha listened without judgment, then said words Danielle would never forget. "Men like that count on your shame to finish what they started. Don't give in that power." The next day, Danielle became assistant manager. A week later, when an attractive maintenance man asked her to dinner, she declined. "I'm seeing someone," she lied. "Who?" he asked. "My future," she answered. "When was the moment you decided to rebuild after someone tore you down? What was your first step toward becoming someone new? Tell me in the comments." At night, alone in her small apartment, Danielle sometimes remembered Grant's touch, how his hands had moved across her body, how she believed his whispered promises. The memory still burned, but differently now. Less like pain, more like fuel. Martha's mentorship turned into partnership. By month 8, Danielle was managing the entire property. By month 12, she'd identified 3 investment opportunities in neighboring hotels. The fire in her eyes no longer scared Martha. It inspired her. The chess pieces were black and white, but Danielle Brooks played in red, the color of both warning and opportunity. The boardroom of Coastal Hospitality Group gleamed with polished mahogany and old money, 12 white men in navy suits staring as she unfolded her presentation. A black woman daring to tell them how to save their failing Charleston property. "Gentlemen," she began, voice steady as steel, "your occupancy rate has dropped 32% in 18 months. Your customer satisfaction scores are abysmal. You're bleeding cash. I'm here to stop the hemorrhage." 18 months had passed since the courthouse steps. 18 months of 16-hour days and strategic planning. Martha had connected her with the right people, but this was all Danielle. "Who exactly are you again?" asked Roger Pembroke, CEO of Coastal. His eyes trailed down her body, lingering too long. "I'm the woman who increased the Azalea Inn's revenue by 46% in 1 year," she replied, meeting his gaze until he looked away first. "I'm also the woman holding your last chance at solvency." Her plan was radical. Convert the struggling historic hotel into a luxury boutique experience targeting wealthy female travelers. "Women control 85% of consumer spending," she explained. "Yet the luxury travel market treats them as an afterthought." Hours later, as the board members filed out, Roger lingered. "Impressive presentation," he said, standing too close. "Perhaps we could discuss it further over dinner?" Danielle smiled, recognizing the opportunity beneath the invitation. "I don't mix business with pleasure, Mr. Pembroke, but I do believe in mutual benefit. Shall we discuss my compensation package instead?" The contract named her vice president of acquisitions with a salary that made her hands shake when she signed it. Not because of the money, but because of what it represented. She was no longer surviving. She was climbing. That night, she bought the New York Post article about her divorce and pinned it to her wall. This wasn't the destination, it was barely the beginning. How far would you go to prove someone wrong who said you'd never succeed? Drop a fire if you've ever turned rejection into motivation. The next 6 months brought victories in brutal essence. Danielle revitalized the Charleston property, then identified a failing hotel in Atlanta ripe for acquisition. Her reputation grew. The woman with the golden touch, the turnaround specialist who transformed failing properties into gold mines. In meetings, she noticed how men watched her, some with desire, others with resentment. She used both to her advantage, neither touching her heart. At night, sometimes she dreamed of Grant, his hands on her body, his breath against her neck. She'd wake up aching, angry at her body's betrayal. The only touch she allowed herself was her own, release without vulnerability, pleasure without risk. With each success, each promotion, each property saved from bankruptcy, Danielle moved one step closer to her real goal, a confrontation Grant Whitmore would never see coming. While Grant Whitmore sipped scotch in Manhattan penthouses, Danielle Brooks was building an empire with her bare hands in cities he'd never bothered to visit. The abandoned hotel's lobby was covered in dust and broken promises. But as Danielle walked the empty space, she didn't see what was, she saw what would be. Her heels clicked against marble that would soon gleam again, echoing like a countdown. "You're insane," Martha said, surveying the decrepit building. "This place has bankrupted 3 owners in 5 years. "They weren't me," Danielle replied. 2 years had passed since the courthouse steps. 2 years of calculated moves and strategic sacrifices. Now, at 25, Danielle was ready for her boldest move yet. Brooks Global, her own hospitality company. The investment meeting was held in a temporary office with folding chairs, all she could afford. 5 potential investors, all men who'd made their fortunes before she was born. "I'm not asking you to believe in this building," she told them, confidence masking her racing heart. "I'm asking you to believe in me." For said no. The 5th, Julian Reynolds, stayed after the others left. "Why this building?" he asked. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that missed nothing, Julian didn't look at her the way most men did, as something to possess. He looked at her as an equal. Location, potential, and spite, she admitted. This property competed with a Whitmore hotel until it failed. Julian's eyebrow raised. "Grant Whitmore? The hotel magnate? My ex-husband," she said, watching his reaction carefully. To his credit, Julian didn't flinch. "Interesting. Most people run from painful history. You're running toward it." "I'm not running anywhere," Danielle corrected. "I'm building." His investment came with one condition: regular strategy meetings between them. Professional at first, then lingering over drinks, conversations extending beyond business. Danielle kept her guard up, even as she noticed his cologne, the way his hands moved when he spoke, the respect in his gaze. The contractor she hired reminded her of Grant. Same confident swagger, same entitled attitude. When he placed his hand on her lower back during a site tour, electricity shot through her body, not desire but warning. "Touch me again and you're fired," she said calmly. His replacement finished the renovation 2 weeks early and under budget. What would you name your empire if you built one from scratch? What would your legacy stand for? Share your vision below. The day Brooks Global opened its first renovated property, a champagne bottle arrived with no card. She knew who it was from, the only investor who believed in her when she had nothing but plans and fury. The same man who now wanted more than return on investment. Standing on the rooftop terrace of her first hotel, watching Atlanta's skyline glitter against the night, Danielle allowed herself one moment of triumph. Tomorrow she would return to the hunt, to the strategy, to the plan. But tonight belonged to the girl from Ohio who refused to be destroyed. The first rule of business is never mix work with pleasure, but the first rule of revenge is to break every rule that stands in your way. Julian's Atlanta penthouse offered a view of the city skyline she was slowly conquering, lights twinkling like the opportunities that lay before her. His hand on the small of her back felt like the first warm thing she'd allowed herself to feel in 2 years. "To your success," he said, clinking his glass against hers. Brooks Global's first quarter exceeded projections by 22%. "To calculated risks," she countered, her eyes meeting his over the rim of her champagne flute. The evening had begun as business, quarterly investor briefing, but shifted when Julian asked her to stay for dinner. The meal he'd prepared himself, the conversation flowing beyond profit margins to books, travel, childhood dreams. "Why hotels?" he asked, refilling her glass. "You could succeed at anything." Danielle considered lying, then decided against it. Hotels are where people go to escape, to reinvent, to become someone new. I understand that need. And is that what you're doing? Becoming someone new? She set down her glass. I'm becoming who I always was, just without apology. Julian moved closer, his knee touching hers. And who is that? Someone who doesn't need saving. His laugh was soft, genuine. I've never met a woman less in need of rescue, Danielle Brooks. When he kissed her, she waited for the panic, the flashbacks to Grant. Instead, she felt present, electric alive. His hands cupped her face with reverence, not possession. I should go, she whispered against his mouth. You should stay, he countered. She made her decision in that moment. Calculated like her business moves, but driven by a hunger 2 years of celibacy had sharpened to a knife's edge. His lips traced the curve of her neck as she arched against the floor-to-ceiling window. Anyone could see us, she whispered. Good, he responded. Let them see a woman who knows exactly what she wants. His bedroom was minimalist, expensive like Grant's had been, but the similarity ended there. Where Grant had taken, Julian gave. Where Grant had rushed, Julian lingered. His mouth traced every inch of her body, patient, attentive. Tell me what you need, he murmured against her inner thigh. Everything, she admitted, but nothing permanent. He understood, bringing her to the edge with his mouth, his fingers, before finally sliding inside her. The pleasure built like a storm, his rhythm matching her demands without ego or agenda. When she came, crying out against his shoulder, tears sprang unexpected to her eyes. Not for Grant, not for the past, but for the woman she'd become. Strong enough to take pleasure without surrendering power. Afterward, Julian held her without clinging, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare back. Stay, he said simply. And for the first time in years, Danielle slept through the night in someone else's arms. Is it possible to keep your heart locked away while letting someone into your bed? How do you protect yourself while still moving forward? Tell me your thoughts. The morning brought no regrets, only new clarity. This Julian pleasure connection could exist alongside her goals, separate compartments in her life. As long as revenge remained her priority, she was safe. As Julian slept beside her, Danielle's phone lit up with a news alert. Whitmore Hotel's stock plummets amid scandal. For the first time since the courthouse steps, she smiled without forcing it. The game was changing, and soon it would be her move. Success tastes sweetest when served cold, with a side of calculated timing and a garnish of perfect information. The Brooks global headquarters in downtown Atlanta rose 22 stories, glass and steel reflecting clouds and ambition in equal measure. Her corner office faced north toward New York. Not by accident. These projections are conservative, Danielle said, pointing to the chart displayed on the boardroom screen. We can acquire 3 more properties by year's end. Her executive team, carefully selected, fiercely loyal, nodded in unison. In just 2.5 years, she built a company that now owned 11 hotels across the Southeast, each one profitable within months of acquisition. The Miami property closes next week, her CFO reported. That puts us in direct competition with Whitmore's South Beach location. Danielle kept her expression neutral, though satisfaction bloomed in her chest. Their occupancy rates have dropped 18% this quarter. We'll capture their overflow, then their primary customers. Later, alone in her office, she updated her acquisition map, a digital chart of every Whitmore hotel property, with Brooks' global locations strategically positioned nearby, like chess pieces surrounding a king. Julian arrived at 7, his custom suit replaced by jeans and a casual button-down. 3 months into their arrangement, and he still made her pulse quicken. Working late again, he asked, kissing her neck from behind. Always. He spun her chair to face him. I have a proposal. Her body tensed. Julian, a business proposal, he clarified with a smile. Meridian Capital and Brooks Global. A merger. Danielle blinked. You want to merge our companies? It makes perfect sense. Your hotel expertise, my investment capital. Together we'd be unstoppable. The numbers added up. The synergy was undeniable. Their companies complemented each other perfectly. And yet, I need time to consider it, she said carefully. That night, in his bed, Julian's hands moved with practiced precision across her body. Each touch sparked pleasure. Each kiss ignited response. But as he brought her to the edge, her mind drifted to her ultimate goal. "Where are you?" he whispered, noticing her distraction. "Right here," she lied, drawing him closer, burying the truth in heated kisses. When Julian proposed combining their companies, the merger made perfect business sense. But as he laid out the numbers, all Danielle could think was, "This isn't the merger that will satisfy what burns inside me. There is only one fusion that would extinguish that flame." What drives you more, the desire for success or the need to prove someone wrong? Has revenge ever motivated your greatest achievements? Comment bilo? Later, checking financial news on her phone while Julian slept, she saw it. Whitmore Hotels seeking strategic partners amid market pressure. The headline was business jargon for desperation. Grant was looking for investors. His empire was wobbling. Danielle slipped from bed and went to the window, city lights stretching below her like possibilities. The moment she'd been building toward was approaching faster than expected. "Soon," she whispered to her reflection, a promise and a threat in one word. Information is the most valuable currency in both war and business. Danielle Brooks had been collecting it like ammunition since the day he left her with nothing. The private investigator spread photographs across her desk. Grant looking haggard outside board meetings, arguing with investors, the strain of failure etched into his once arrogant face. She touched one photo lightly, surprised to feel nothing but calm determination. His company has lost market share for 6 consecutive quarters, the investigator explained. 3 board members resigned last month. The vultures are circling. Danielle nodded, absorbing each detail. In his personal life, 2 short relationships, nothing lasting. Works 18-hour days. The gossip columns call him Manhattan's most miserable bachelor. She smiled at that, not for malice but satisfaction. While Grant floundered, she flourished. Brooks Global now employed over 500 people across 4 states. What about internal operations? Your source was right. His CFO is actively interviewing elsewhere. And I got this, he slid a document across the desk. Next quarter's projections. They're facing a cash flow crisis. The report contained everything she needed. Which properties were underperforming, which executives were flight risks, which banks were losing patience. A roadmap to Grant's downfall. When the investigator left, Danielle swiveled toward the wall behind her desk. What her team called her vision board was actually her war room. Maps of Whitmore properties, news clippings of Grant's failures, strategic acquisition targets marked in red pins. Her phone rang. "Julian, I've been thinking about our merger discussion," she said in greeting. "And I've been thinking about you," he replied, voice low. "Specifically about that noise you made last night, when I—" "Julian," she cut him off, heat rising to her cheeks despite herself. "I'm at the office." His laugh traveled through the phone. "Come over tonight. We could discuss business." After, hours later, in Julian's penthouse, she was pressed against his kitchen island, his mouth hot on her neck, when he suddenly pulled back. "Why do you have a PI following Grant Whitmore?" Danielle froze. "How do you? I saw the invoice on your desk this morning." His eyes searched hers. "This is more than competition, isn't it? This is personal." She stepped away, adjusting her skirt. "You knew he was my ex-husband. Knowing and understanding are different things." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "Danielle, are you with me because of me, or because I'm useful to your vendetta?" The question hit like a slap. She considered lying, then thought, what was the point? "Both," she admitted. "Does that bother you?" Instead of anger, his eyes showed respect. "Honesty always wins with me." He pulled her back into his arms. "Just remember, revenge consumes the person holding it too. Have you ever dedicated yourself to a goal so completely that it changed who you are? Was it worth the transformation? Share your experience." They made love with new intensity that night, as if Julian was trying to replace her past with his present. When they finished, bodies slick with sweat, phones forgotten, Danielle wondered if he was right about revenge changing her. The thought vanished when her phone lit up with an alert. The report confirmed what she'd been waiting for. Grant Whitmore needed a miracle to save his company, and he was coming to Atlanta to find one. The board had given him 30 days to secure a partner or face hostile takeover. Danielle picked up the phone. It's time. The conference room had the same dimensions as a boxing ring, with one critical difference. In business, you can smile while delivering the knockout punch. Her red suit was armor, her stilettos weapons, her smile a warning. When the elevator doors opened and Grant Whitmore stepped into the Brooks Global reception area, 2 years of planning crystallized into a single perfect moment of recognition in his eyes. First came confusion. What was his ex-wife doing here? Then disbelief. This couldn't be her company. Finally understanding. The trap he'd walked into willingly. Mr. Whitmore, her assistant said with practiced politeness. Ms. Brooks will see you now. Danielle stood as Grant entered her boardroom, her executive team flanking her like generals. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, rehearsed her composure, practiced the exact angle of her unbothered smile. What she hadn't prepared for was how he'd aged. Gray flecked his temples. Lines marked his eyes. The confident swagger had dimmed to grim determination. Danielle, he said, voice catching. Grant, she replied, cool as winter. Please have a seat. He sat stiffly, his team filing in behind him. Young executives with hungry eyes, an older CFO with a permanent frown. All men, all looking everywhere but at her. I wasn't aware this was your company, Grant said, attempting recovery. The meeting request came from your CFO. Strategic choice, she replied. I wanted to ensure you'd actually show up. The presentation that followed was brutally efficient. Brooks Global offered to purchase a 45% stake in Whitmore Hotels, with management control of 5 key properties. The deal would infuse cash into Grant's struggling company while giving Danielle access to markets she coveted. Her team delivered facts with precision. Whitmore's declining market share, Brooks Global's meteoric rise, the generous valuation they were offering despite Whitmore's obvious distress. Throughout, Grant's gaze rarely left her face. She felt it like a physical touch, part recognition, part desire, part dawning horror of what she'd become. Or perhaps, what she'd always been beneath the naive facade he'd fallen for. These terms are predatory, his CFO finally objected. Danielle smiled. They're fair given your position. Your Q3 losses were substantial. Without a capital infusion, your Miami property faces foreclosure next month. Grant's face paled. That information hadn't been public. How did you? I do my homework, Grant. Something you should have done before dismissing me as nothing but a gold digger. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Her executives shifted uncomfortably, witnessing something beyond business, the settling of a personal score. We need time to consider, Grant said finally. You have 24 hours, Danielle replied. After that, my offer drops by $5 million. As her team escorted Grant's people out, he lingered, waiting until they were alone. The air between them crackled with unspoken history, with intimate knowledge neither could erase. You built all this to destroy me, he asked quietly. I built all this because you thought I couldn't, she corrected. What would you say to someone who once underestimated you after you've proven them wrong? Would you speak at all, or let your success talk for you? I want to know your thoughts. As the meeting concluded, Grant reached for her hand, the first physical contact since he'd pressed divorce papers into her palm. Danielle, can we speak privately? The question hung between them like smoke. The real negotiation was about to begin. Some business deals are signed in boardrooms, but the most dangerous ones are negotiated behind closed doors, where the stakes aren't just financial, they're personal. Her office overlooked the city she now partly owned, the same city where she'd arrived with nothing but a suitcase and the sting of his betrayal. Grant stood before her desk, the setting sun casting half his face in shadow, a visual metaphor for the man she'd never truly known. Your terms are impossible, he said without preamble. Yet here you are, discussing them anyway. Danielle remained standing, refusing to cede even the symbolic power of height. That suggests desperation. Grant moved toward the window, his reflection showing a tightened jaw. You've done well for yourself. Don't. Her voice cut like glass. Don't pretend this is a reunion. Don't act proud, as if you had any part of my success. He turned, eyes finding hers. I never thought you were after my money, Danielle. The admission hit harder than expected, a blow to her certainty. Then why? Why the public humiliation? Why tell the world I was a gold digger? Because it was easier than the truth. His voice dropped, that I couldn't give you what you deserved. Danielle laughed, the sound sharp and disbelieving. A family? Children? You think that's why I married you? Wasn't it? The doctor's appointment. Your face when we learned I was sterile. I married you because I loved you. She interrupted, the words burning her throat. The children would have come later, or not at all. But you needed a reason to discard me, so you created one. Grant stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same brand he'd worn when they were married. Her body remembered it, responded to it against her will. I was wrong, he said simply, and I've paid for it every day since. Not enough, she replied, stepping back to break the spell of proximity. But you're about to. She handed him a revised contract, terms even more aggressive than before. Majority control of his company. His removal as CEO. The Whitmore name reduced to a sub-brand under Brooks Global. When he finally looked up from the contract terms, his voice was barely audible. This would give you controlling interest in everything I've built. Her smile was a blade. Exactly what you took from me. Do we have a deal, or shall I wait for your board to remove you next week? He placed the contract on her desk, fingers lingering on the paper. And if I agree, what then, Danielle? Does your revenge end, or is this just the beginning? She hadn't expected the question, hadn't planned beyond this moment of triumph. I don't know, she admitted. I've been focused on this day for so long, I never considered what comes after. If you could sit across from someone who once hurt you deeply, but now needed your help, what would you demand in return? Justice or mercy? Tell me in the comments. Grant's phone buzzed with messages from his waiting team. Reality intruding on this moment suspended between their past and future. I need until tomorrow, he said finally. Danielle nodded once. Tomorrow, then. As he reached the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I never stopped thinking about you. She kept her expression neutral until he was gone, only then allowing herself to feel the tremor in her hands, the unexpected crack in her perfect vengeance. The heart and mind rarely align in matters of revenge, a lesson Danielle Brooks learned when satisfaction tasted different than she'd imagined. Grant's signature dried on the contract, black ink permanent against white paper. The moment should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt like stepping off a cliff, the momentum of 2 years carrying her toward an uncertain landing. Congratulations, her attorney said, collecting the documents. You now control 51% of Whitmore Hotels. The boardroom emptied quickly, Grant's team avoiding eye contact as they filed out. Only Grant remained, looking somewhere between defeated and relieved. Will you keep the name? He asked quietly. For now, Danielle gathered her papers. The brand still has value, despite your best efforts to run it into the ground. He accepted the jab without flinching. What happens to me? You stay on as figurehead. Public face, no power. I believe you're familiar with the arrangement. It's what you planned for me when we married. The barb hit its mark. Grant's jaw tightened. I deserve that. You deserve worse. She stood to leave. My team will contact you about transition details. Outside, cameras flashed as news of the merger broke. Danielle's PR director had crafted the announcement perfectly. Not a hostile takeover, but a strategic partnership, with quotes about synergy and shared vision. The elevator doors had barely closed when her phone rang. Julian, it's done, she answered. I'm watching the press conference now, he replied. You look triumphant. Are you? The question gave her pause. I should be. Come over tonight. We'll celebrate. Julian waited in his penthouse with champagne and questions. Too many questions. How long have you been planning this? He asked, refilling her glass. Since the day Grant left me with nothing. And now you have everything. Julian studied her face. His company, his legacy, his future. Is it enough? Danielle moved to the window, Atlanta spread below like a glittering promise. It should be, but it's not. It wasn't a question. She turned to face him. How would you know? Because I know you. He stepped closer. This was never about the money or the company. This was about making him feel what you felt. Powerless. Discarded. His accuracy struck like lightning. And what's wrong with that? Nothing. His hands cupped her face. Except that you're still letting him define you. Still reacting to him. Still bound to him. Anger flared hot and sudden. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. His voice dropped lower. The question is whether revenge will finally free you, or just change your prison. She pulled away. Don't psychoanalyze me, Julian. Not tonight. He caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Is this what you really want? Julian asked, his hands tangled in her hair. She closed her eyes, suddenly unsure. I don't know anymore, she admitted against his lips, the truth more intimate than their bodies coming together. His mouth captured hers, demanding and tender all at once. Clothes fell away as they moved to his bedroom, her anger and confusion transmuting to hunger. Julian's hands memorized her body as if it were territory he might lose access to at any moment. When he entered her, Danielle gasped at the intensity, not just physical pleasure, but emotional release. Tears leaked from her closed eyes as they moved together, her climax building like a storm. Let go, he whispered against her ear. Of everything. Just let go. She shattered in his arms, crying out as pleasure peaked and crashed through her body. For those moments, Grant Whitmore didn't exist. Revenge didn't matter. There was only sensation, connection, present tense. Have you ever achieved something you wanted for years, only to discover it wasn't what you expected? How did you handle that realization? Share your story. Afterward, as Julian slept beside her, Danielle's phone lit up with a news alert. Brooks Whitmore merger rocks hospitality industry. But the text from Grant that followed carried a warning. You may have won this round, but you've forgotten what I know about you. Some secrets are worth more than companies. Every empire has foundations buried deep. Danielle Brooks was about to discover hers were built on quicksand. The engagement ring caught fire in the sunset light streaming through her penthouse windows, diamond clarity contrasting with the murkiness of the choice before her. Julian waited for an answer while her phone buzzed with Grant's threats. You deserve someone who's building a future, not fighting a past, Julian said, ring box open between them. I want to be that someone. The proposal had come 3 days after the merger announcement. 3 days of champagne toasts and congratulatory calls. 3 days of waiting for Grant's cryptic threat to materialize. Julian, Danielle hesitated, words failing. This is unexpected. His smile dimmed slightly. Is it? We make sense together. Your hotels, my investment firm, us. That was the problem. It made perfect sense on paper, just like her revenge against Grant. But her heart felt nothing but panic. What secrets was Grant referring to? Julian asked, changing tactics. In his text, Danielle stiffened. You read my messages? You left your phone unlocked. Answer the question. She turned away, walking to the window. Atlanta's skyline blurred through unexpected tears. There are things about my past, about my marriage, that I haven't told you. Such as, the question hung heavy. 3 years of carefully constructed narrative threatened to collapse. Our fertility issues weren't one-sided, she finally said. The doctors found problems with both of us. Low odds, not impossibility. Grant used his sterility as an excuse, but the truth was messy, Julian approached slowly, and I was devastated about the diagnosis. Not because I desperately wanted children right then, but because someday I might. Grant twisted that reaction, claimed I'd married him under false pretenses, expecting a family he couldn't provide. That's the secret he's threatening you with? That you wanted children? No, Danielle met his eyes. The secret is what I did after he threw me out. Julian waited, ring box still open between them. I considered options that would have destroyed his reputation completely. Legal options, but brutal. I prepared documents, gathered evidence of financial misconduct I'd witnessed during our marriage. Then I chose a different path, this path. building your own empire instead of tearing down his. Yes, but those documents still exist. She took a deep breath, and some of what I found would interest federal investigators. Julian closed the ring box with a snap. So he's blackmailing you. Reveal what you know, and he'll expose your plans. Mutually assured destruction. Classic Grant. Julian set the ring on her coffee table. You need to decide what matters more, finishing this war or building something new. As Julian walked out, leaving the ring on her coffee table, her phone chimed with an email from Grant. Attached was a document she believed destroyed in the divorce. The medical report that had started everything, but with one critical difference for what she remembered. What secrets would you be willing to risk everything to keep? At what point does protecting yourself become self-sabotage? I want to hear your thoughts. The original file showed both their fertility issues clearly marked. But this version, the one Grant had shown her during their marriage, had been altered. His condition emphasized, hers completely absent. Danielle sank on her couch, document glowing accusingly on her screen. The foundation of her revenge, her entire rebirth, had been built on a doctored medical report and a lie she'd never questioned. Truth is the most devastating weapon. It destroys not just what is, but rewrites what was. The private laboratory confirmed what the recovered document suggested. The medical report Grant had shown her 2 years ago had been altered. The truth cracked open like thunder. He had never been sterile. The document had been modified, his condition exaggerated to create an excuse for their divorce. The digital signature timestamps don't match, the forensic tech explained. This version was created 3 days after your appointment, using the hospital letterhead, but with key details changed. Danielle gripped the edge of her desk until her knuckles whitened. And my results? Normal fertility parameters, with minor concerns that wouldn't prevent conception. Completely different from what appears in the altered report. For 3 days, Danielle barely left her office, canceling meetings and avoiding Julian's calls. The question consumed her. Why would Grant fabricate medical results to end their marriage? On the 4th day, she called the one person who might have answers. Ms. Brooks, Grant's former assistant, answered, surprise evident in her voice. It's been years. I need information about the days before my divorce, Danielle said without preamble. Silence stretched across the line. I signed an NDA. I'll double whatever he paid you. Another pause. It wasn't about money. It was about protecting you. The words landed like a physical blow. Protecting me from what? Not over the phone. Meet me at Peachtree Coffee. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The coffee shop bustled with morning customers when Linda Collins slid into the booth across from Danielle, looking older but with the same efficient eyes. Grant was involved with people you didn't know about, Linda began. Investors with connections to markets in Eastern Europe. Money that needed cleaning. Money laundering? Danielle's voice dropped to a whisper. Through the hotels? Linda nodded. When they approached him, he refused at first. Then they found leverage. What leverage? You. Linda sipped her coffee. They threatened you. Said they'd make your death look like an accident if he didn't cooperate. The world tilted on its axis. So he divorced me. Publicly humiliated me. To make them believe he didn't care about you anymore. To remove you as a pressure point. Memories flashed through Danielle's mind. Grant's sudden coldness, the fabricated medical reports, the public cruelty so at odds with the man she'd married. Why didn't he tell me the truth? The less you knew, the safer you were. And he needed your reaction to be genuine. Danielle laughed bitterly. Well, it worked. I hated him completely. When she confronted Grant in his temporary office within her building, his smile confirmed everything. Why? She demanded. His answer changed the game entirely, because I found out who you really were and who sent you into my life. Has a revelation ever made you question everything you thought you knew about your past? How did you separate truth from manipulation? Share your experience below. Grant's eyes hardened. Linda told you about the investors, didn't she? What she doesn't know is who introduced me to them in the first place. He slid a folder across his desk. Your investor, your partner, your almost fiancé. Julian Reynolds has been playing us both from the beginning. Danielle opened the file. blood turning to ice as photographs showed Julian meeting with the same men who had threatened her life. 3 years ago, months before she even met Grant, the most dangerous enemy isn't the one standing before you. It's the one you never saw coming. The evidence spread across the conference room table like a map of deception. Financial trails, manipulated communications, strategic investments, all pointing to a puppet master who had played them both for years. Grant's hand shook as he pointed to a name neither had suspected. Julian Reynolds isn't just an investor, Grant explained, voice tight. He's the American face of the Volkov Group, a Russian conglomerate using hotel properties to move money through the United States. Danielle stared at the surveillance photos. Julian with known criminals in Moscow, London, Dubai. Dates that stretch back 5 years. Why target us specifically, she asked. Your background made you perfect. Small town, no connections, beautiful enough to catch my attention. Grant's bluntness stung, but she couldn't deny its truth. They researched me for months, found I had a weakness for women unlike those in my social circle. So I was bait. The realization turned her stomach. And later, when you pushed me away to protect me, Julian was waiting to pick up the pieces, to guide your revenge directly toward me. The hotel room where they'd set up this secret meeting felt suddenly claustrophobic. Outside, both their companies continued operating, neither team aware their leaders had been meeting privately for days. We need proof, Danielle said finally. Hard evidence of Julian's activities. My security team found this. Grant opened his laptop, displaying security footage from the Whitmore Hotel in Chicago. Julian is escorting known criminals through back entrances. Cash transfers in the hotel vault. How long have you known? She asked. About Julian? 6 months. About the real reason they wanted you away from me. His eyes met hers. Only recently. When you started dating him, I realized they'd set us both up. Why would they want us apart? It makes no sense. It does when you consider what we've accomplished separately. You built a competing hotel chain, destabilizing my market position. I made risky investments, trying to stay competitive. Now, they control pieces of both our companies through shell corporations and Julian's direct influence over you. The implications crash down like a collapsing building. The merger, she whispered, it gives them access to both our companies. Complete control of the luxury hotel market in 6 major cities. Perfect for their money movement operations. Danielle stood, pacing the room. We need to go to the FBI. With what? Suspicions? They'll deny everything, and we'll lose what little advantage we have knowing their game. Then what's your plan? Grant's smile was grim. We give them exactly what they want, while building a trap they'll never see coming. Would you ever ally with someone who hurt you to face a greater threat? Can 2 people with a painful history ever truly work together? Tell me what you think. For the next week, Danielle and Grant met secretly, building their counter-strategy. The proximity reopened wounds, reminded her body of what it once knew. When his hand accidentally brushed hers while pointing at a document, electricity crackled between them. Unwanted but undeniable. As they developed their counter-strategy late into the night, Grant's phone lit up with a message that drained the color from his face. It's Julian, he said, turning the screen toward her. He's been working for them the entire time. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's discovering they were never your true opponent. The skyline of Atlanta glittered beyond the windows of the emergency board meeting. Both companies' executives seated together as Danielle and Grant presented their united defense. 2 years ago, they'd faced each other across courthouse steps as enemies. Now they stood shoulder to shoulder. The merger announcement was premature, Danielle explained to the shocked faces around the table. We've discovered concerning financial entanglements that require immediate investigation. Grant stepped forward. Effective immediately, all financial interactions with Meridian Capital and Julian Reynolds are suspended. The FBI has been notified of potential money laundering activities. Questions erupted. Danielle raised her hand for silence. This company, both our companies, were built through honest work. We won't allow them to become vehicles for criminal activity. Later, Alone in her office, Grant closed the blinds and activated the signal jammer that would block any listening devices. Julian's been calling nonstop, Danielle said, showing her phone with 15 missed calls. He knows we're onto him. Good. Grant loosened his tie. The FBI needs 48 hours to position their agents. We just need to keep him believing we're still on track with the merger. She nodded, the weight of their situation pressing down. I still can't believe I fell for it. All of it. We both did, Grant reminded her. I threw away our marriage to protect you, only to push you directly into their path. The irony twisted like a knife. Why didn't you find a way to tell me? A hint, a message, anything? I tried once. His voice softened. I sent flowers to your mother's house 6 months after the divorce. The card said, "Nothing is as it seems." They were returned, destroyed. Julian, Danielle realized. He intercepted them. He's been controlling both our narratives for years. The room seemed to shrink, the proximity between them charged with history and revelation. Grant's eyes held hers, the mask of corporate rivalry completely gone. I never stopped loving you, he admitted, the words rushing out as if he'd held them too long. Even when I thought you hated me. Even when you were building an empire to destroy mine. Danielle's chest tightened. Don't. We can't rewrite the past. No, but we can understand it differently. His hand reached for hers across the desk. She should pull away, maintain the professional barrier they'd established. Instead, her fingers twined with his. I missed you, she whispered, the admission breaking something loose inside her. Even while I hated you, I missed you. The kiss wasn't planned. It erupted between them like a storm held back too long. His hands remembered the curve of her waist. Her fingers recalled the texture of his hair. They moved together with the muscle memory of lovers separated but not forgotten. This doesn't change what happened, she whispered against his neck as his hands traced familiar paths along her body. No, he agreed, but maybe it explains it. Their coming together was neither forgiveness nor forgetting. It was recognition of a truth more complex than either had allowed. On her office couch, clothes hastily pushed aside rather than removed, they reclaimed something stolen from them. Each touch acknowledged the wasted years. Each kiss promised a future neither had dared imagine. When she cried out her release, it felt like finally setting down a burden she'd carried too long. Is understanding the same as forgiveness? Can explanation ever truly heal betrayal? Share your thoughts on whether some relationships can be rewritten rather than just repaired. When the votes were tallied and their strategy approved, Grant took her hand beneath the table. Where do we go from here? He asked. For the first time in 2 years, Danielle Brooks had no plan, only possibility. The woman who entered the courthouse with dreams of love and left with nothing but a suitcase now stood at the helm of a new beginning. One built not on revenge, but on her own terms. The new corporate headquarters rose in Midtown Atlanta. Neither Brooks Global nor Whitmore Hotels anymore, but something new they'd created together. The sign unveiled at the opening ceremony reflected not just a company name, but a philosophy, Restoration Properties. Julian Reynolds and 3 executives of the Volkov Group were arrested yesterday, the Atlanta Journal headline announced. The FBI operation had been flawless, catching Julian mid-transaction at the Chicago property. He never suspected we were working together, Grant said, closing the newspaper. That was our advantage. 6 months had passed since they'd uncovered Julian's manipulation. 6 months of careful coordination with federal authorities, of rebuilding trust between their companies, of redefining their personal relationship. The merger had proceeded, but differently than planned. Equal partnership, both names on the letterhead, both minds shaping the vision. The Miami property opens next month, Danielle said, reviewing the schedule. That makes 22 hotels in our portfolio. 23, Grant corrected, sliding a folder across her desk. I just closed on the Columbus location. She raised an eyebrow. Columbus, Ohio? That market's too small for our model. His smile held secrets. It's not about the market. It's about the location. Understanding dawned as she opened the folder. The property was 2 blocks from the grocery store where she'd worked when they first met. Sentimental, she teased, though the gesture touched her. Strategic, he countered. Every empire needs to remember its beginnings. That night, in the penthouse they now shared, Grant traced patterns on her bare shoulder as they lay tangled in sheets. "I've been thinking," he began. "Dangerous," she murmured against his chest. "About family, about the future." Danielle propped herself up on one elbow. "What about them?" "The original medical reports. The real ones said we could have children. Difficult, but possible." His voice held careful neutrality. "Is that still something you want?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibilities neither had allowed themselves to consider during their years of conflict. "I built an empire to prove I didn't need anything from you," she said slowly, "including that future we once talked about." His face remained carefully neutral. "And now I realize there's a difference between not needing something and not wanting it." She took his hand, placed it over her heart. "I want it. The family. The future. With you." His kiss was gentle, reverent, so different from the passionate urgency that had characterized their reconciliation. This wasn't about reclaiming the past, but building something new. "No more secrets," he promised against her lips. "No more protection through deception. No more revenge," she agreed. "Only restoration." What would you rebuild if you could start again with clear eyes? Would you choose restoration over revenge? Tell me what empire you would create if given a second chance. 1 year later, the business press would marvel at the transformation of two rival hotel chains into the fastest-growing luxury brand in America. Industry analysts would debate the strategic brilliance of the merger, the innovative management approach, the remarkable recovery from near disaster. But in a private ceremony overlooking the Atlanta skyline, only one headline mattered to Danielle and Grant: the birth announcement of twins, boy and girl, named Faith and Second Chance. Living proof that some stories deserve a rewrite. If this story moves something in you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about power, redemption, and the choices that define us. Tell me in the comments what resonated most: the betrayal, the revenge, or the restoration. And remember, sometimes the greatest power isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something they said you never could.